That's 79. Okay.
Wyrm, you have been walking up and down these stairs for ages.
I know, but if I'm gonna do this story justice, I want to do what Sasamo did, and what pilgrims have been doing for centuries.
I don't understand.
What, you never wondered about the name of these steps? The 80 sins of Sasamo?
Not really.
Well, what if I told you they were once called the 80 steps of Sasamo, and the story we know about them isn't what it seems?
Oh, pray tell.
And that's 80. But that was just one day. She had to do this for 80 days straight. Ul'dah is a nation steeped in history, tradition and prosperity, but also tragedy. Every aspiring adventurer in Eorzea has walked the steps outside Ul'dah. Though these steps may look ordinary, the tale behind them and the tragedy the name stands for is one that has stood the test of time. With a name as imposing as the winding climb required to reach their terminus, the 80 Sins of Sasimo tells the tale of a princess of Ul'dah who would dare to defy the throne, only to pay the ultimate price. While once a scandal that rocked the foundations of Ul'dah in its day, the truth and exact details of this entire affair have been worn and weathered, just like the steps that bore this tale. According to records penned by Ul'dah court historians, it was in the year 1388 of the 6th Astral Era that Princess Sasimo Ul Samo, first in line for the throne, turned cloak against both nation and kin. Having grown weary of her elder sister Sassidy's rule, Sasamo is believed to have quietly forged alliances with the remnants of the recently overthrown Ul Dynasty, in a plot to claim the Sultanate for herself. Before the plan could be executed, however, one of Sasimo's own cabal betrayed her to the Sultana, resulting in the princess's immediate arrest and imprisonment in the Marasajit Pit. The pit is a series of prison cells in the deepest, darkest corner of Ul'dah. Only those who commit the most serious of crimes against the Sultanate are sent here. It's said monsters and void scent crawl the halls where the pit is located, and due to its location, likely the undead of Sildee. Sasigan Ul Sisigan III was kept here after the Ul line was deposed following the war with Sildee. Rauban was also kept here after his capture in the Bloody Banquet, until he was moved later pending execution. At the much publicised trial, the princess was charged with and convicted of a remarkable 80 counts of wrongdoing, from high treason against the Sultanate and attempted regicide, to blasphemy and libertinism. Normally, such crimes would be punishable with a sentence no less than death, yet matters were not as simple as erecting a gallows in the Gold Court, for Sultanate law specifically prevented the execution of any member of the royal family. To see justice met, the Sultana tasked her councillors to design a punishment, one that would serve to duly humiliate her sister, while proving severe enough to deter any future uprisings. The resulting sentence was, at the time, the most extravagant the realm had ever witnessed. For each charge brought against her, Sasimo was ordered to climb and descend the 80 steps leading from Scorpion Crossing to the Gate of the Sultana 80 times a day for 80 straight days, reciting aloud one of her 80 crimes with each step taken. For some of the more vertically endowed races, this might not be much of a daunting task, but for a privileged noble, weighing but a few stones and measuring not a hair above 3 fulms, the punishment was brutal to say the least. As is their wont, the citizens of Ul'dah were eager to witness the shaming of one of such high standing, and took relish in their part of the ever-raunchous rabble. In the first weeks of Sasimo's punishment, the crowd would gather every morn at cockcall to jeer and spit, hurling profanities and refuse without cease. The repeated abuse was a heavy burden on both mind and body of the princess, and soon it began to take Sasimo upwards of 18 bells to complete her daily circuit, leaving little time to regain her strength before the following sunrise. Yet to her credit, the disgraced second daughter of the former sultan refused to flinch, refused to hang her head in shame. It was this stubborn resilience that saw the transformation of the small folks' hearts. After witnessing the tiny maiden will herself up and down the dusty tor day after brutal day, the ever-present jeers slowly began melting away into silent awe, before eventually rising to cheers. However, while this encouragement of the populace was enough to brighten her spirit, it could not provide succor for Sasimo's weary flesh. And on the 50th day, on the 67th step of her 75th ascent, the princess could lift her legs no more, and collapsed from exhaustion, never to rise again. Yet what would happen next would leave the city-state awestruck. The crowd of small folk who had accompanied the princess for nigh on 3 moons rushed to her side and gently raised aloft the wasted frame. They then proceeded to carry it in the somber silence for the 5 remaining circuits, so that Sasimo Ul'dah might be absolved of her crimes before the long journey to Thal's realm. The Sultana was visibly shaken by the turn of events, wrought with guilt for approving the punishment that would ultimately condemn her only sibling. In response to the actions of the small folk, Sasadi immediately proclaimed Sasimo's sentence rightly served, and moved to rename the very stairway upon which her sister fell the 80 Steps of Sasimo, that the people might ever remember the day. Or, so the royal court would have us believe. That's the tale as the people currently know it, but recent discoveries have a different version to tell. Often do we find that history is as malleable as hot wax, with historians serving as but the seals of the ruling class. Might there not have been another side to this tragic tale, a side that might paint a different picture? The recent discovery of a diary, allegedly penned by Sasimo in her final days, cast doubt upon the court-spun narrative that Sasimo was the driving force behind the failed coup, suggesting that the true villains of the story may be her advisors. Advisors working under orders of the Sultana herself, in an attempt by Sasadi to preemptively quell any potential threats to her rule, by constructing an elaborate plot that would see her sister implicated in crimes inescapable. This theory is further supported by the fact that, despite documented collusion with the princess, each of Sasimo's advisors silently escaped any manner of punishment, with most simply disappearing from ul'dah altogether. A convenient end for the Sultana, to say the least. Is it not possible that, trapped in a position where any negativity towards the now martyred princess might incite the ul'dah citizenry, Sasadi ul Sadi was forced to make a move that would be received favourably by the public? Had she truly forgiven her sister? Her actions would suggest otherwise. Petitions by the populace to hold a yearly remembrances for the fallen princess were consistently denied, and pilgrims who had journeyed to walk the steps turned away by guards citing congestion. And what's more, but 3 summers had passed before the Sultana ordered the city charters rewritten, quietly changing the steps' name once again to the current 80 Sins of Sasimo. And the episode involving the small folk burying the princess after her premature passing? Rewritten with an official account stating that Sasimo collapsed on the final step of the final pass. A slow yet surgical precise barrage of palace-centric propaganda had become a pall over the memories of the people, leaving them susceptible to a truth convenient to none save the court. To me personally, the diary seems authentic. I can see Sasimo sitting in her cell in the Marasaja pit, worn out and weary from her trials. Makes sense she would wish to put her true feelings and thoughts on paper. Answering the question of how this diary survived, in all likelihood she hid it somewhere in her cell, which was likely never searched in the aftermath of her death, and could have laid there for decades, centuries even. It's also possible the princess still had her supporters, who kept the diary safe until the truth could be safely revealed. And we have to admire Sasimo's strength of will. She wasn't an adventurer, she was a princess. The fact she made it so far is inspiring. I mean, look at these steps. I'm big and tall for a Lalafell, and even I find them a chore. Plus she had to spend night after night in the pit, a place where rest is hard won and the nights are anything but silent. Going back to the original tale, as one with a firm grasp of ul'dah history, I can see the holes and discrepancies. This part about Sasimo, for example, allying herself with members of the recently overthrown Thorn Dynasty in order to reclaim the throne, isn't really accurate. The Thorn family were the stewards of the ul'dah throne after the fall of the first Ul Dynasty. They maintained this rule for over 2 centuries, until ul'dah was fully secure, finally ceding the throne to the rightful Ul family in 1355, 33 years before the supposed Sasimo plot with the Thorn Dynasty. Though the Thorn family are of royal blood, I don't see them doing a 180 after 2 centuries of stewardship, which finally ended with their family legacy securing ul'dah's future. That said, it's not outside the realm of possibility that certain members of the Thorn family were not pleased about reinstating the Ul line after 200 years. It really does seem like this was all a plot by Sultana Sasadi to eliminate any threats to her rule. But in that same vein, the Thorn family would also be a threat to her, yet their family continued on. The tale of the citizens carrying Sasimo the rest of the way so her soul may be absolved is quite beautiful. Sasadi meanwhile would have had a harder time when she had her deeds weighed on the scale standing before Thal. None of this speaks well to the early years of the second Ul Dynasty either. Just 3 decades in and already corruption returned. But happily, Sasimo and Sasadi's descendants would be better, with the current Sultana, 17th in the line of Ul, being one of the greatest blessings ul'dah has ever received.